When we speak about bearing burdens, then in daily use the language makes a distinction between a light burden and a heavy one. We say that it is easy to carry a light burden, hard to carry the heavy one. But here this is not the question. It is much more ceremonious to say concerning this that the one and same burden is heavy and yet light. The discourse concerns this miracle, for it is certainly a greater miracle than to turn water into wine, that the heavy burden continues to be heavy and yet is light. However, we sometimes speak in this way, for when a man is about to sink down under the heavy burden he is carrying, but the heavy burden is the dearest thing he owns, then he says in a certain sense that the burden is light. We see this in the world. We see it with loathing when the miser almost kills himself for the treasure he carries, while he nevertheless regards this heavy burden as light, because the treasure means everything to him. We see it with a quiet elevation when a man bears what in a noble sense is the dearest thing on earth to him. And the burden is indeed heavy, but nevertheless light. When the lover in distress is almost sinking under the weight of the beloved whom he wishes to save, then the burden is certainly heavy, and yet, if you ask him about it, it is so indescribably light. Although the two are in peril of life, and the other is the one who is weighing him down, he wishes only one thing. He wishes to save her life. Hence he speaks as if there were no burden at all. He calls her his life, and he wishes to save his life. How has this change come about? I wonder if it is not because a thought enters, an idea in between. The burden is heavy, he says, and he pauses, but now reflection follows on the thought, and he says, no, oh no, it is nevertheless light. Is he then double-tongued because he speaks in this way? Oh no. If he speaks thus in truth, then he is truly in love. Therefore it is by the aid of the thought, of the reflection, and by the fact of being in love, that the transformation takes place. My yoke is easy. If a man is what they call fortunate, or more correctly, if he is also light-minded, then I suppose he may toss his head proudly and carry it high. But if a man walks bowed by the heavy yoke of suffering, since he would certainly be one who knew nothing else to do than merely to sink down under the weight, then he walks with drooping head, struck dumb in a speechless, thoughtless annihilation. Thoughtless. Aye, for the trouble is precisely that he does not have one single thought by whose aid he might at least be able to lift his burden. One thought there must be. If ever it is needed, then certainly here in particular, in order to rank a human being above a beast. It is a beautiful and elevating expression of a noble man when he speaks of the earthly strife, and then asks only one thing: grant me a great thought. And thus there can be many glorious and precious thoughts, which, even if they cannot make the yoke light, can nevertheless help to lift the burden. There can be the thought of the better times one has had, or about the better times one hopes for. The thought about a man one loves, or a man one admires. The thought about what one owes to another man, or the thought about what one owes to oneself. But chiefly there will still be only one thought, one only, which can be decisive, one thought, which contains the secret of the transformation of faith, from the heavy burden into the light. This thought is that it is profitable, that the heavy suffering is profitable, easy,